Hi guys, welcome back to Beginning Scratch. This is lesson 2. So an overview of what we'll be going over today is the types of blocks, and we'll learn about what they each do, and drawing with pens, and we'll learn about moving a sprite. So before we get started, a quick review. Question 1, what is a sprite? And question 2, how would you find the coordinates of a sprite? You can pause and think about your answers. Okay, so number 1, what is a sprite? A sprite is a character that you can control using code. And 2, how do you find the coordinates of a sprite? You click on the sprite in the bottom right corner, and then you look at the x and y values that it gives you. Okay, now we can move on to the types of blocks. So there's 6 blocks that we'll be covering today: the reporter, events, conditional, control, motion, and looks. Okay, the first one, reporters, are basically something that represents a value. So in this case, our cookie reporter will report back how many cookies there are. So if there's 20 cookies, it'll be acting like 20 cookies basically. So in this operator, it'll be cookies divided by 5. So in this case, it'd be 20 divided by 5, or 4. And if we have 50 cookies, it'd be 50 divided by 5. So basically it just represents a value. If we go here, can get rid of this. And then we go to operators to get a plus, and then variables, and then my variable. So now, or sorry, not my variable, we'll go test variable, and then we go change my variable by 50. So now, this variable equals 50. So, or sorry, it adds 50. So it was 51 before, so now it's 100, now it's 151, etc. We could also set it to 50 by using the set to test variable, and then now it'll set it to 50. So now if we wanted to put any number here, it would represent 50. So if I did 10 plus 50, this this green operator block represents 60 because it's 50 here, plus 10, which is 60. Now, conditional blocks. So these are green and pointed, and you can think about they're pointy because they point you to either true or false. So they allow us to test two values and output true or false based on the condition. So in this case, if cookies is equal to 50, so if there are 50 cookies, it'll print, oh no, I'm out of cookies for 2 seconds. And if there's less than 50 cookies, it won't. If there's more than 50 cookies, it also won't. So if there's 49, it won't say this. Because cookies, or 49, is not equal to 50. So the operator is not true. The conditional is incorrect. It's false. So it won't run this code. So if we go to here, and we go to operators, and we have less. So if test variable is greater than 50, then it'll be true. So in this case, it's not greater than 50, it's equal. So it will be incorrect. So if we set it to 40, greater than 40, this is true. If we set test variable to 20, now it'll be false again. And we can use this true or false value later on, once we learn the proper blocks. Okay, now back to the action or motion block. These are probably the most exciting. They allow us to move sprites around, we can change variables, and we can control the flow of our project. So if we go back to here, we can say, we can set this aside for now, and we can go to motion, and we can say move 10 steps. So now every time I click the flag block, Scratchcat is going to move 10 steps. Perfect. Okay, and now we're going to be covering events. So an event basically senses if something or an event happens, something like maybe a variable changes, or in this case, if it receives a message. This allows us to trigger blocks of code to run, and maybe the most important event we're going to use is when flag clicked, which allows us to start projects. Okay, so we're going to go back, events. So here, events. So I have this when flag clicked already, and then I can go to when space clicked, or when space key pressed. I do this, and then now every time I press the space key, it's going to move 10 steps. Okay, we could also use a different one, like for example, when this sprite clicked, it'll move 10 steps. So now every time I click on Scratchcat, it's going to move 10 steps. Okay, yeah, so now every time I click, it's going to move 10 steps. Okay, now we will move on to control blocks. So these are basically block managers. They allow us to basically control blocks in a lot of different ways. This also introduces new block structures, which is the loops and if statements. So now we'll go here, we'll go to control. We have this if statement. So if test variable is greater than 50 or greater than 40, we know that'll be true because it can either be true or false. In this case, it'll be true. Or sorry, in this case, it'll be false because 20 is less than 40. Then if it's true, it'll run this block. So in this case, we'll have it move 10 steps. But right now, it's not doing anything because 20 is less than 40. So we'll have to set it to something larger, like 50. So now that it's larger, we can do this, and every time, since it's true, it'll run this code. So that's control. We also have loops. If we go here, we have repeat, and we also have repeat 10 times. So if I do this, it'll repeat 10 times. So if I put it here, since it's true, it'll run the thing inside the if statement, which is a loop. So now it moves 10 times, which is basically equivalent to 100 steps. So if I did 1 and then 100, it'll move the same amount just instantly. Now moving on to looks, these basically allow us to change the way a sprite looks, like the name. So these are purple, and basically they allow us to change the appearance of a sprite, things like the size, the text, and the costume. We'll go over the costume. That's basically each sprite can put on a different costume, and by costume, you can kind of change how it looks. So in this case, this is a forever loop, so it'll run until you tell it to stop. It switches to costume 2. So costume 2 is the one with the bent leg, the arms in the lower position, and then it'll wait 1 second and then switch to costume 1. And that's the one with the straight leg and the arms raised. And then it'll loop again and switch back to costume 2. So it looks like it's just walking in place right now, or just kind of wiggling. Okay, so a quick review. So what are some of the ways we can use a conditional block? What is a conditional block? And try to remember what these three types of blocks are. Okay, so a conditional block basically allows us to get a true or false value by looking at two numbers. So if we compare the amount of cookies to the number 50, if cookie is larger than 50, it'll give us true. If it's less, it'll be false. And some ways we can use them are in like an if statement. So if we can check on the amount of cookies. If cookies is greater than 50, I'll buy more cookies. If it's less, I won't buy any cookies. And for the types of blocks, this is a event block, this is a motion block, and this is a control block. So event blocks, basically they're events. When things happen, we're able to run the code that attaches to the bottom. Motion blocks are movement. They allow us to move sprites around. And control blocks allow us to basically control the flow of our program. So this is the conditional I was talking about. If we put a conditional here, then if this conditional is true, then we can run this code. Okay, now we're onto the pen blocks. So the blocks we just covered are default blocks in Scratch that come automatically, but the pen one we actually have to add as an extension. So if we go to here and we go bottom left, there's a lot of extensions we can add. But the one we want to work on today is the pen extension. So now it will have this little pen library, and we'll have these pen blocks that we can access. So for now, I'm just going to get rid of this because we don't need it anymore, and we'll learn about pen. So now the most important ones are pen up and pen down, and we'll cover that here. So if we want to draw with a sprite, we have to set pen down. This is pretty much exactly like setting your pen down on the page, and then once you add movement, it'll start drawing as long as your pen is down. So if we go here and then pen down, now the pen is down, but since it's not moving, you can't see anything. So now if we go to motion and we go move 10 steps, and let's say 100 just so it's easier to see, it'll move 10 steps. Fucking retarded. Okay, cut here. It'll move 10 steps or 100 steps, and it'll set the pen down. So we'll have to do that before. And now it draws, because the pen is down, it'll move 100 steps. And if we want to get rid of this, even if we get rid of this block, it's actually still going to draw. And that's because the pen is still down, even if we're not telling it to. So we have to tell it to put the pen up, and then it won't draw. But now we're still stuck with this line that we have from earlier. So not only do we have to pen up, we also have to erase all. So this will just get rid of all lines. And now that we've put the pen up and we've set the erase all to be true, we're going to have none of those lines left. Okay, now it's your turn to try using the movement blocks and the pen blocks to draw a square, a triangle, and use the pen up and pen down function. And a quick hint is the square, every time you rotate 90 degrees, and to draw a triangle, you rotate 120 degrees. You guys can pause and go over your answer, and then I'll check in with you guys. Okay, so now let's go over the answer. This is, it might look a little more complex than your version, but as long as you can get it to draw the square and the triangle, then that's okay. So here we have three options. We can press down arrow, up arrow, and space. So up arrow is just erasing all. So if we press it, currently there's nothing there, but if there was, it would erase it. And then here, pen down, move, and then turn 120. So I mentioned here that triangles, you rotate 120 degrees. So I know when I press down arrow, it'll be a triangle. Perfect. And then I can erase it with up arrow. And then when space key pressed, it'll pen down and then move 100 steps and then turn 90. So I know that'll be a square. So if I do space key, it'll draw a square. I can also draw a triangle and a square, and I can erase both. So if you want a challenge, you can try drawing a hexagon, which is 6 sides with 60 degrees, or you can try drawing a circle. So that's a little more difficult. Basically, the more sides you have, the closer to a circle you get. So the closest you can get is 360 degrees, which is the total turn, so 1 degree every time you move forward. So you can work on that if you want. I'll give you guys a few minutes if you want. If you don't want to work on this, just don't pause, and then you can look at the answer I give. But here, the answer, I've just modified the code we were looking at before. So for the hexagon, we're going to move 60 steps and then turn 60 degrees, and we're going to do that 6 times. So down arrow, and now it's drawn a hexagon. We'll erase that. And so this one is a little bit more complex. Since we need to repeat it 360 times, instead of just copying this code 360 times, I actually just put it into a for loop. So 360 times, it'll move 1 step and then turn 1 degree. So this, since we're doing it so many times, you can actually see the speed that it's doing it at. Like before, it just happens instantly. But now, since I'm actually doing it so many times, we can actually see it working, which is pretty cool. Okay, so now we have a circle.